Thanks for tuning in to this episode of I Have Something to Say, where subject matter experts are unafraid and unapologetic about sharing their perspectives regarding issues that impact our lives. They speak up because basically they give a shit. So if you're tired of canned answers and want to finally hear real people cut through the BS and talk about real issues, this is the podcast for you. I'm your host, Sami Heyman Marrero from Urbender, and behind our mixer is our producer, Chris Majoka from UdoU.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to I Have Something to Say. Today's a very special episode because we're going to talk about goal setting and dealing with adversity and overcoming adverse times. And we have as our special guest, Trish Perry. She's the owner of Harmonize Coaching, and she has over 20 plus years of experience in the corporate sector, has gone through a lot. And tapped into the power of vulnerability. We were talking about that before we got on the recording, and I'm just excited to have you come in and visit with us today. Trish, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk to you because this year, 2020, has been like a disaster for many people. There's just a lot of loss and a lot of uncertainty and a lot of anxiety, fears, decisions to be made. We have a mutual friend, and
Do.
she made the introduction because she thought it was pertinent to get your approach to life and to finding
Absolutely.
power, joy, and productivity from within, as we explore what's next in our lives, and since you
Right.
specialize in supporting people that have gone through adverse situations, I think it was like perfect timing. And thank you for joining us today.
Great. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Yeah, it is amazing. There were a group of people that were asked to explain in one word 2020. And it was words like failure, not being successful, lockdown, masks, fear, panic. There were a few hope and opportunity words sprinkled in there, but mainly it was those really negative words. And 2020 has really put us in that mode. And so the question is, how do you take your power back? And that's what I specialize in, is helping people. Your power's not gone, it's just covered up. So how do you uncover that power and use it again for productivity, to change your life to what you want and to create joy again? So
Yes. Thank
what
you.
I do.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. I want to talk a little bit about your setting, like where you work your magic. I see in the
Yeah,
background. Talk to me about
absolutely.
your wall. Uh-huh.
Well, this room is my office now, but it started as my children. I have 3 children, and it started as their nursery. And a friend of mine, his name is Mike Thomas. He lives in Hawaii. He lived here and worked with me at Target. And I asked him to paint Winnie the Pooh on my wall. I'm thinking it's going to be a small picture like this, right? He comes over and for the next month paints an entire mural of the 100-acre woods. And so my whole office is the 100-acre woods. And if you know anything about Winnie the Pooh and the stories, it is about possibilities. It's about the power of friendship. It's about the power inside yourself, and it's about believing. And so when I went to move in here for my office, I thought, I can't conduct business with Winnie the Pooh. And The reality is that is exactly who I needed to conduct business with, because it's about the possibilities and it's about
Mhm.
believing. So,
Yes. And
so
so
that is
what do
my
you do?
background and I've
I
chosen to
love
keep
it.
it.
I love it. I think it's
Absolutely.
fantastic. Yeah, totally. It's the right environment, right, to create
Absolutely. Yep.
and help people create their new paths, right? So talk to me
Absolutely.
about this, you know, for all those people out there that are going through adversity, what's what's the advice you give, or like a first step to try to break, that sensation of being stuck, that
Right.
yucky sensation, of having lost control, or having
Right.
fallen into the pit of despair, or feeling embarrassed, or all of those yucky feelings that come with the loss of that perfection. I love how I was reading about you, and how you say that I'm finding perfection in imperfection.
Absolutely. So perfection, just like control, is a fallacy.
Hmm.
We There's nothing perfect, and perfection is in the eye of the beholder, right? So what I think is perfection, you may not think is perfection. So I call myself a recovering workaholic and a recovering perfectionist.
Hmm.
Um, I have a couple of tenets that are really important, and the first is that you are not your adversity. And so many people become their adversity. And I'll give you a really good example. I think most of us have had that really bad boss in our lives, and that's an
Hmm.
adversity. And adversity is really life changing stress. So, for the first, 13 years of my career, strategy was my number one strength. And in 13 years, I probably had 10 different bosses, and they all had strategy as my number one strength. And then I got this new boss, and he was very high at Target. And he decided that I was not strategic, that what I did was implement. So on every review that he wrote, he said that I was not strategic, that that was actually an opportunity, and my strength became implementation.
Hmm.
So within a couple of years, guess what? I believed that.
Hmm.
And suddenly my power and strength of being a strategist had disappeared. And
Hmm.
I thought I had lost it. But actually, what happened was it got covered up. And when I left that position, I found that power again. And it was actually more powerful since it had been covered up, because I took the vow that nobody was ever going to cover that up again. I don't care
Hmm.
what they thought, it wasn't true.
Hmm.
So it's about realizing that you are not your adversity,
Hmm.
and that you're worthy. Like, I talk about being everybody is worthy of joy. No matter what you're going through, you are worthy of joy,
Hmm.
and to embrace that. And then another piece about adversity is really about opening that box. And I'll give you a really good example. And then this is a vulnerable example, and I am a huge fan of vulnerability as a power tool, because it can be a
Hmm.
really powerful thing that you can use in your life, and it actually opens up fears for other people that they can then share. And that's how the whole Me Too movement was created. Is someone told their story and someone else said, "Me too. I don't have to be
Yeah.
ashamed to tell my story."
Yeah.
So I
Hmm.
was abused when I was a child, and I never dealt with it until I was 40. So for
Hmm.
35 years, I kept that secret.
Hmm.
And that secret is like a small box that's on your table. And the
Mhm.
longer you keep that secret, the bigger the box gets
Yeah.
until it encompasses the entire room. And
Mm.
when you are ready to open that box, you shine the light on that fear and you take the power away from that fear. And
Mhm.
suddenly you take that power back and
Mhm.
that becomes yours. So,
Mhm.
so that is the other way that I talk about how you deal with your adversity is
Mhm.
that you have to become vulnerable and initially you just open that box in private and
Yeah.
you write about it. You can talk to yourself about it. My suggestion is not that you do it in your head because you start to ruminate in your head and things get bigger and bigger. So my suggestion is you either do it with someone or you actually journal about it and write it down.
Mhm. Mhm.
Once you do that, that fear's out in the open and you no
Yeah.
longer have to be afraid of it. So
Yeah.
that's a lot of what I do with my clients is I have them face that fear, whatever it is. And even if it's a negative boss, write about it.
Yeah.
Suddenly, it doesn't become
Mhm.
quite as scary.
Yeah.
So
Mhm. Yes.
that's so
Wow.
that's
So
my
it's
advice on
it's
adversity.
yeah, yes, it's like to face it, head on and write about it and expose it, to the level that you feel comfortable, so that way it's not inside anymore, it's that thing, right? And then you can
Right,
tackle it and deal with it.
right.
Very
And
interesting. And
and then
mhm.
the other two steps to that are number one, telling your story.
Mhm.
So that means that whether you tell it, um, you tell it to a friend or a spouse or someone close, you're telling it in your journal. Um, but it's a one way where you're telling your story. And the
Mhm.
last piece is sharing it.
Mhm.
And that's what we're doing here. So I'm sharing
Yeah.
with you about the fact that I was abused when I was a child.
Mhm.
And then, you and your audience are more than welcome to start a dialogue with me about
Mhm.
it. And
Mhm.
that sharing is what opens up the community and opens up the world.
Yeah. And also builds community, because then people
Absolutely.
feel I don't need to have this facade or live in this, secret, right? And this
Right,
and
right,
like it's just not me. It's just
right.
not me. Others are going, and you can lean in on each other and really support each other. One of the things that and when you talk about not letting adversity define you,
Mhm.
or you become your adversity, also talking about that. And you have a very unique and but it's a really clear picture, of how that works, like the two different ways that
Right.
people normally or could possibly explore a path to take to overcome the situations that they're going through. Could you talk to me a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So the process I use in coaching is called Power Path Coaching. And I came to that because of studying neurology, et cetera, but really to put it in really simple terms, we all have a path that we take. So I'm gonna use an example that most of us can relate to, and that is weight loss, right? So we have created this path throughout our lifetime that is well worn and it in fact is paved. And it's so easy to go down that path. So when you think about a stressful situation happens, what do? Maybe you reach for a bag of chips or some ice cream or whatever that is, and it doesn't get you to the place that you want to go. And that place that you want to go is weight loss, but man, it sure does feel good in the moment.
Mhm.
But you've chosen a path that's not going to get you where you want to go in life. So that is the habitual path. And that's the path that's the easiest to take for each of us. And then there's this second path that is through the woods, and it's a very narrow path. It's hard to walk. There are volunteer trees, there's buckthorn. I mean, you can just imagine that in your mind, right? And that path actually takes you where you want to go, but it's really hard to walk. And you have to make a choice which path you want to take. Do you want to end up where you've always been and you don't like the outcome? Or do you want to end up somewhere else where you know the end of that path is where you want to be? And what I challenge people is, you know what? Go in with the tools. Go in with the lawnmower. Go in with the sift. Go in with whatever you need to create that path. And it's going to take hundreds of times of walking that path before it becomes habitual. And it will. Understand that anything, my favorite example is Steve Jobs and the iPod. So his idea
Mhm.
was 1,000 songs in your pocket, right? When you think about the fact that the iPod came out, then the iPhone, the iPad, etc., it all started with an idea. And then it was years of research and testing and different prototypes before they came out with the iPod. But all we saw was the iPod, right? So it
Right.
seemed like, wow, there's this thing that has changed our lives. And all of a sudden, it is in our lives.
Right.
It took a long time to create. Any big idea, anything like that is a long time in the making. So when
Mhm.
you are trying to change a habit, and let's take eating, and you do really well for like 2 weeks, and then 1 week you fall off the wagon. What do most of us do? Well, there I go again. I went
That's
down
it.
that
I'll start
habitual
on
path.
Monday. My husband makes fun of me because I say, okay, I'll start again on Monday. That's like my
Right.
mind.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I like to talk about, so think about when a baby walks. Do you have children?
Yes, too.
Okay, so you have two children, so you have seen what happens when a baby walks,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
It starts with the standing process. And what do? They pull up on something, they let go, and they fall down. And they continue until they get that balance piece. And then they start taking steps. Well, they take a step, they fall down. They have to get back up again. It repeats and repeats and repeats, and all of a sudden they're running, right? So,
Mhm.
have you ever known a baby who has said, God, I suck at this? I'm not doing it. They don't, right? If they're able bodied, every baby walks. So, as we become older and older, there's this right and wrong way to do it. But when you're
Yeah.
little, it's like, well, let's just try it, see if it works. If it doesn't,
Yeah.
no harm, no foul. I'll try something
Yeah.
else.
Yeah.
But we don't do that as adults. We
Yeah.
think,
You're
well,
right. It's so yeah. Yeah. That
yeah,
it
we
has to
think,
be
we'll
a
forget it.
certain
I ate the
way.
chips. I'll start again on Monday, and Monday comes and goes, and you don't start it again,
Right.
right?
Right.
It's like,
Yeah.
well, next Monday I'll do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
Because I'm
you
taking
know,
the easy path, but it's getting me. It's the
right,
easy path to nowhere. Basically, is what
right,
you're saying. Because I keep on saying
absolutely.
that's the easy path is to go on a diet and go for a walk. When what I really need to do is like like a trainer or force myself to get off my butt and go out and bike ride every day, or do to put
Right,
in the look like the sweat, right? And really
right,
work it off. Work it off. Yeah,
yeah,
but it's so funny what you said about the baby, because I'm thinking about babies when they're crawling. sometimes babies, some babies crawl weird, like they crawl backwards. Have
Right,
that and so then, but it's true. There's no right or wrong way. They're exploring how to move around and how to crawl, so it's
and
interesting. And we don't
yeah,
judge it. We don't say, no, this, you have to crawl forward only, so it's
right,
interesting how we're conditioned to think things have to be a certain way.
right, and, right and left-handedness, right? My husband used to get his left hand hit with a ruler
Yeah.
by the nuns because
Mhm.
you had to be right-handed. There was a
Mhm.
truly a right and a wrong way there. And
Yeah.
you know what? He never changed. He's still left-handed. But
Yeah.
our society creates this right and wrong. And
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it's about what is your power
Yeah.
and how can you use that to get where you want to go. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely. That's great.
so that's
And
the
and
power
two
path.
and yes, absolutely, the power path. Yes. And so, to that point, we're coming up to the end of the year, and I know it's still like 8 weeks away or whatever.
Right?
This year was a total disaster. So, the habitual behavior is to do our resolutions, to work on, things that we're looking to accomplish. And it's just a list. There's no real work put into it. But you've developed a program that's called, the 9 C's, right? The
Right.
nine
Yep.
C's
Absolutely.
of goal setting, of how to effectively set goals, to, really focus on doing the work and getting to where you need to be or where you want to be, right? And
Right.
so could you
Right.
tell me a little bit more about what that process looks like?
Sure. Absolutely. So first of all, there are a couple of numbers I want to throw out there. The first is that only 17% of the population, this was in a Harvard study, only 17% of the population actually sets goals outside of organizational goals. So if you work for an
Mm,
organization, you have to have company goals. That's just part of the
mhm.
process, right?
Right.
But outside of that, only 17% set goals. Only 3% actually write them down, and
Mm,
only 1% of the population actually meets their goals every year,
wow.
which is a staggering number.
Yeah.
And then the other really interesting number is when you set those New Year's resolutions, do you know that 85% of those resolutions basically are in the garbage by February 15th? So when you got all those numbers together, it's like, wow, how do people get anything done? Right?
Yeah.
So 2020 was such an unprecedented year, and so many people just gave up on their goals. If they did set them, they just gave up on their goals because
Mhm.
you know what, I can't control anything anyway, so
Mm,
why even try?
right.
So I was thinking a lot about this, and so I put together a goal setting process using Power Path coaching.
Mhm.
And it's really interesting because I ended up with 9 C's. So if you're into feng
Mhm.
shui at all, you know that nine is the best number. So it would, and this just happened to come to fruition. So I have created a workshop actually where we do the 9 C's. And the first two are about closing out the year.
Mm,
So, what went well? What didn't work? What do you want to bring forward? What do you want to leave behind? And actually closing out that year so that you understand what happened.
right.
And then the second piece of it is clarifying your values. And the
Mm,
reason that we do that is because our values are the cornerstones to our lives. And usually, when you have an adversity, you find that you're not living to your values or whatever is happening is not in alignment with your values.
mm,
Once you've done that, the third piece you do is to create a success story. And I break it down into three pieces. I break it down into home, I break it down into work, And then the third is life. People
Mm.
are, well, there's home life and there's work life. Well, no, there's actually life. So again, I'm going to use this weight piece and your health. Your health is a part of home. Your health is a part of work. Your
Mm-hmm.
health is just part of your life.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I create this whole life thing. When you have adversities that happen, and again, I'm going to be very vulnerable. Um, our best friends, their daughter took her life on Sunday, and we've been dealing with that. And that's part of life. That's not your home life. That's not your work life. That is your life, and
Yeah.
it affects everything. So you are a whole person, and that's
Yeah.
that's what your life is. So
Yes. I'm so sorry.
at any rate,
Mm-hmm.
oh, thank you very much. But like I said, vulnerability is a part of life, and you can
Mm-hmm.
either let it paralyze you and disable you, or you
Mm-hmm.
can use it to propel you forward and create that power. And
Yeah.
that's what I suggest that everyone does.
Yeah.
So we've gone through the first two, which are closing, or
And
we're on the third.
clarifying.
So we've gone through closing, clarifying, and now we're doing creating. So you
Mm-hmm.
create a success story about, and you do it as if you're sitting in December of 2021 and you're
Yeah.
telling the story to someone about how successful your year has been.
Oh,
So
so
you,
looking
you
back. So you take,
you
so
look,
it's
you're
like you read
looking
the
back.
picture. Yeah. And
Mhm.
describe it.
And you're telling someone how successful your year has been.
Okay.
And it's very powerful. And there's a lot of neurology that is in this idea in writing it as if it's already happened.
Mm-hmm.
The fourth piece is then going in and choosing 3 to 5 goals. And I say 3 to 5 goals because you only want to work on 3 goals at a time.
Mm-hmm.
That scientifically is proven as the most um,
Effective way
effective
to
number.
plan. Yeah.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
But you may get a goal complete, by let's say April. Then you want to pull in one of your other goals.
Yeah. Okay.
So you choose which goals you want to do for the year. And then the next piece is to commit to those goals.
Mm.
And the way that you commit is actually writing them down with pen and paper.
Okay.
And it sounds so old fashioned, but it is, again, scientifically proven that it's called the reticular activating system, the RAS system in your brain is
Mm-hmm.
activated only through writing with a pen
Mm.
and a piece of paper. It is not activated when you type out onto a computer.
Right.
So you want to, and it affects your memory and it affects
Mm-hmm.
motivation. So
Okay.
that's the reason that we do it that way. And I have a whole method of committing to
That's
your
awesome. So writing it down with so okay, writing down with pen and paper in your own
with pen and
handwriting
paper.
is the best. That's fantastic because
Correct.
everyone makes fun of me. I have like look a gazillion
No.
everything. I grab paper. I have papers,
And
papers, papers. Look,
and you
papers,
tell me
all
what your
papers with notes. You see?
and tell me
And my
what your
husband
memory
Fred
is like.
always saying, "What a mess!" And I'm like, it's I don't know. It works. I have to write it down and see my scribbles and my
And
handwriting.
let me ask you, what is your memory like when you write those things down?
Oh, it's I I I remember everything. You know the
Right,
details.
right,
Yes, to
right.
me it reinforces.
And that's
Memory.
and that's
Yeah.
why I had a boss one time tell me to keep my notebook in my office and come see her. And I went in and I saw her and she said, "Oh, I'm so glad that you left your brain in your office." Because she called my notebook my brain because I had to write everything down. And what she didn't realize was that was my way of remembering things and really committing it.
Yeah.
But at any rate, so
Yes.
then,
Yes.
so once you have committed,
Mhm.
and there are, when you write it down, you say, okay, how does this goal meet my values? How is it in
Mhm.
alignment with my values? You talk
Mhm.
about what will I get when I completed this goal, and then how will it change my life? So
Right.
you're much more committed to that goal than just setting it and saying, oh, I want to lose 40 pounds this year.
Right.
You're absolutely committed to it. From
Right.
there, you construct a plan. So, what are the
Okay.
milestones that you need to complete to get to your goal? And
Mm.
then we create a 90-day plan.
Mm.
So when you start on January 1st, or I'm
Mhm.
doing the workshop both in November as well as January. But
Right.
then you create this 90-day plan and you are ready to hit the ground running.
Right.
So you have a plan. It's not just a hope. You
Yeah.
actually have a strategy to get it done.
Great.
Once you've completed all of those C's, you then communicate them.
Mhm.
So choose someone that you will be accountable for. And if you take the
Mm.
workshop, we pair you with 1 to 2 people that you are going to talk to at least every quarter, if not once a month, to talk about
Mm.
your to talk about your goals,
Yeah,
what
to
you've
put you
done
in
on
check.
them.
To put you in check. Yes.
Right? Absolutely. So you communicate and you're accountable when you communicate, right?
Mhm.
Then there is a piece called checking and changing. And this is one
Mhm.
of the most important pieces. we so think about whenever you're doing a project or really anything in your life, think about when you got married and you decided, okay, here's the marriage I want. Let me plan this out. And you planned it out and all kinds of curveballs came in.
Mhm.
And you had to make changes throughout that
Mhm.
process.
Mhm.
And then you ended up married, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
You have to do the same thing with goals. It's about checking in with your goals. What's changed in your personal life? What's changed in your business life? What's changed with the environment? What's changed with the economy? A
Mhm.
good example of that is if I had said for 2020 that I wanted to do business with organizations on Lake Street.
Mhm.
Well, in Minneapolis, when George Floyd
Mhm.
was killed in May, there were riots and
Mhm.
much of Lake Street burned down. And
Mhm.
those businesses closed for a time or they closed forever.
Right.
So if I had not changed my goal and said, okay, well, Lake Street, basically there are some organizations still there, but many
Mhm.
businesses are out. And
Yeah.
I may have said, okay, I want to change it to organizations on Chicago Avenue. But that was a situation where um, there was a change. I couldn't control it.
Right.
So either I was going to go in and change my goal or I was going to fail at that goal. What would
Right.
you rather
Mhm.
do? You'd rather go in
Yeah.
and change it. And it's okay to
Mhm.
change the goal. You either
Mhm.
tweak it or you change it based on what's happening in life, right?
Right.
And then finally is about celebration. And
Mm.
celebration is not about just celebrating when you have gotten to that goal. It's about celebrating the small wins as well as
Mhm.
the big wins. So when you make those
Mhm.
steps towards your goals, even acknowledging that, look, I've done a podcast,
Yeah.
and acknowledging and talking to other people and telling them what you've done, that is a form of celebration.
Mhm.
So how do you celebrate that? So
Mhm.
those are the 9 C's.
That's
And
awesome.
there it the way that I put it together was thinking about how do you take your power and string it from the very beginning to the very
Yeah.
end.
Yeah.
So
That's
that's
fantastic. So so wait a second. So when does this start? And how long is
so
it? And what's the time commitment? Now I'm getting all up
absolutely.
into the details because I'm
No,
interested.
yeah, absolutely. So first of all, there are 5,840 waking minutes or hours in a year. Okay, so
Okay.
5,840 waking hours in a year. Most people spend between 1 to at the maximum 4 hours creating their goals. Think about that
Mhm.
percentage of your
Oh
entire
my
year. And
gosh.
this is
Okay.
this is basically your roadmap as to how
Yeah.
you are gonna be successful, and you're spending an
Right.
hour. So it's starts on November 2nd. So it's 4
Okay.
Mondays in November. It's September
Mhm.
2nd, 9th, 16th, and 30th. We're taking Thanksgiving week off,
Uh-huh.
but it's an hour every week from
Oh, that's
7 to
it?
8.
Okay,
Yep,
good.
from
Uh-huh.
7 to 8 Central Standard Time. And then there's homework. And that
Okay.
homework will be about an hour a week, sometimes more when you're creating your story, etc. It honestly depends on how much you want to put into it. And you get
Right.
out of things how much you put into them, right?
Right.
So
Right.
at the minimum, you will be spending 8 hours.
Right. And the whole
That's
thing. Right. Right.
right. But that's more than double of the max. That is double of the maximum that most people spend
Invest. Yeah.
with
Invest
their
in their
goals.
goals. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Okay, cool.
and you
Cool, cool,
have these
cool.
9 C's
Mhm.
that not only start the process and set the process, but give you the motivation to complete the process. And like I said, we set you up with an accountability partner so
Yeah.
that throughout the year, it literally is a way to put that motivation in as
Yeah.
well. And then you'll be receiving from me um, between 4 to 6 emails throughout the year,
Mhm. Mhm.
just checking in with you and how are you
Yeah.
doing? And
Yeah.
have you been doing these 9 C's?
Yes. That's great.
So
This
yeah,
is fantastic. So
yeah,
I'm looking forward to it. I'm definitely gonna dive in head first. And
yeah,
I know that
absolutely.
before we started recording, you said that you're going to give us a special code.
Right,
It's Urbender for anybody who's listening to this and wants to also be part of this journey of this,
right.
of this new way, creating your own power path, to
Right.
owning, your future, your goals, and learning how to adjust in that process
Well,
too, because we don't know what 2021 is going to bring at this point, so,
ab-
right?
absolutely not. And that is why you check and change your goals because you don't
Yeah,
know what it's going to bring, but
right.
you set your path to success. And
Yeah,
the Urbender code will give you $50 off
yeah.
on um, the workshop. And I really created this workshop. It's a beta workshop, so I created it at a really reasonable price. And I hope that
Yeah,
people
people
will
take
join
advantage of it. Yes,
and take advantage
absolutely.
of it. And
Yeah.
my daughter, again, when you share things, wonderful ideas come out of it. She said, "Well, Mama, why don't you also offer it in January?" Because some
Mhm.
people put things off. And
Yeah.
January is when they're going to be thinking about, okay, self help. What do I need to do to make this a successful year? So I don't have the dates
Yeah.
down yet, but I will be offering it in January as well. And you
Okay,
can,
cool. So
yeah,
I'm gonna go through it and then we're gonna do a podcast about the goals I've set and
very
the
cool.
outcome. And then, yeah, and so we'll announce it again in December, to make
I love
sure,
that.
you'll
I
give me
love
all
that.
the information and we'll do it again. Like I'll do like a whole thing about the goals I set. See if I
Very cool.
if I learn how to take the more difficult path, but it's the path that I
Right.
create, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the other reason I did this in November is so that you could spend December laying a path for
Yeah.
success. So you
Mhm.
could actually start in December if you wanted, or there
Yeah.
might be some things that you need to do to prep, but you hit January 1st with your
And you're
90-day
ready to
plan.
rock and roll. Yeah, so I
And
can
you're
have my arroz con pollo, pernil, gandule, all of my holiday treats, right? And stuff, and then I can start
absolutely,
enjoy,
absolutely. Well, and you have to prep.
guilt free. and it'll be guilt-free because I know that I already laid the groundwork, and yeah, it's there.
And you're choosing that path, and then you have to prep, so you have to buy a Peloton in December so that
Exactly.
it's at your home in
Exactly.
January, right?
Exactly. This has
Absolutely,
been
absolutely,
fantastic, Trish. I'm so happy, that Shalonda introduced us. Um, Thank you so much. We've been
absolutely.
planning a trip to Minnesota. We were gonna go to Minnesota this year, but with this, it was one of our goals to go to Minnesota.
I know, and you make sure when you come here, when you get to
Yes,
Minneapolis, that you call me,
yes.
and we
Absolutely,
will get
absolutely.
we'll get together.
I can't wait to see you and hug it out. And hug it out,
Absolutely.
right?
The
Okay,
other thing I want to let you know is that the email the I'm sorry, the web address
yeah.
to find out more and to register is powerpathcoaching.com.
Perfect. Yeah, we're gonna include it. I'm gonna include it in the post
Great.
so that way people can just click through. Okay.
Absolutely.
This is
Okay.
wonderful. Thank you so much, Trish. And my condolences. And
Thank you.
I really admire, how brave and just inspiring, you are. I really do appreciate that you made time and didn't, and still kept the commitment with recording this episode of I Have Something to say. I have
Absolutely.
something to say.
And it's just an example for people that it's okay to be vulnerable. I had no idea if I was going to end up in tears or if I was going
Yeah,
to be able to get through it. I
yeah,
somehow pulled myself through it, but you know what? Even if I had been in tears, that would have been okay and you would have been okay
yes,
with it.
yes,
So
absolutely.
so really think about vulnerability as a power tool in your life
Hmm.
because it really
Thank.
can be. I grew
Mhm.
up with vulnerability being a four-letter word. My father was a
Mm,
full colonel in the army,
mm,
and vulnerability was the last thing that you ever thought about showing to the
right,
world.
right.
And it is truly one of our most powerful tools that we have.
Yeah. And with it, with that, whatever you're going through, it's okay. Just
Absolutely.
yes,
Absolutely.
absolutely. Yeah,
Absolutely.
share it with others, and find your power. Right.
Absolutely.
Thank
Absolutely.
you so much,
It
Trish.
was
This
so
was
good to
really,
talk to
really
you.
great.
Bye.
Likewise. Bye.
This concludes this episode of I Have Something to Say. We want to thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to tell your friends about us. We're on Spotify and iTunes as well. There's more to come next week. And remember, if you have something to say, it's time to speak up.